Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of The Jamie Hughes Show. My name as always is Jamie Hughes and today I'm going to be giving you my review of Rampage. So if you want to keep up to date with all the latest movie news and reviews, then make sure you hit that subscribe button. And as always with my videos, this review may include spoilers, so you have now been warned. Rampage is just nuts. It's just so over the top and ridiculous, but I really enjoyed it. Like, don't get me wrong, it's not a perfect movie, and yes, it is a fun, dumb, kind of over-the-top blockbuster, but it's fine. It's really enjoyable. It's entertaining, and, you know, I wanted to go into this movie, I wanted to be entertained by just The Rock and all of his crazy shenanigans, and I was totally entertained. I thought it was a whole lot of fun. I mean, there is a giant gorilla fighting a giant crocodile, fighting a giant wolf that can fly. I mean, what is not to love about this movie? It's like a 10-year-old boy's wet dream. It's just so ridiculous and over the top. And for the last half an hour of this movie, where the giant fight scene takes place, I was like the Vine. If you've seen the Vine, the Vine, God, that made me sound so old and dated. But if you've seen the Vine of the guy, the surfer dude, where they're asking him to describe what it's like riding a wave, that's literally what I was like for the last 20 minutes of this movie. I was like, whoopah, whoocha, bah, like, whoa, and a jaw. I just can't put into words how just over the top and actiony this movie is. It was really fun and really entertaining. And speaking about those action sequences, I thought the CGI in the action sequences was really well done. I do think that the kind of one-on-one interactions, especially with George early on in the film, were a little bit weak. He didn't look the best, but I thought that the whole big battle CGI sequences were very well done, and I want to just give them props for the CGI, basically, because I wasn't expecting it to be that good. Another great thing about this movie is obviously the man, Jeffrey Dean Morgan. He is awesome in this movie. He pretty much just plays Jeffrey Dean Morgan, if I'm being honest. Like, I don't know what his character was supposed to be, just other than a gun-toting cowboy badass. I thought he complemented The Rock and Naomi Harris's characters really well. Both of those are okay in this movie. I do have a little issue with The Rock's character, which I'll get onto in a sec. Naomi Harris is fine. She's just, I think she was the weaker of the three main characters. I just kind of think she was maybe a little bit there for the paycheck. But Jeffrey Morgan just seemed to have a lot of fun with this movie. He was basically, as I say, Jeffrey Dean Morgan in this film, like just cocking around with a gun. It was just ridiculous, but it worked. Again, I just really enjoyed it. And that is like the main takeaway from this film for me, is that it's enjoyable. Like, I know it's not perfect, and there are a few things that I could poke holes in, which I'm going to in a second, but for the most part, it's a really fun, entertaining movie. Now, one of the, a big plus for me is that I was engaged and I was entertained throughout this movie. This movie has just under a 2-hour runtime, and it never felt like 2 hours. None of the scenes really specifically dragged for me. It felt very kind of fresh, and it felt very over the top, and it was always grabbing my attention. There was always something going on, and I just thought it was, again, another big positive. I know it's a blockbuster and that's what it's supposed to do, but, you know, it's kind of tipping the scale of a longer blockbuster, you know, clocking in at nearly 2 hours. And yeah, it was just a lot of fun. There's not much else I can say, really. It was just over the top, ridiculous, and I loved it. Now, as I say, I do have a few issues with this film. There is one that is kind of really obvious, and I hope a few other people picked up on this as well, and that is that The Rock's character just totally changes. Like, the whole tonal shift of this character, the whole kind of characteristics, just everything about this character just changes about halfway through this film. It's just after they've crashed the plane. He's talking to Naomi Harris. Naomi Harris kind of opens up to him. They have this kind of sweet heart-to-heart moment where they're gonna bump fists and, you know, work together to stop the evil corporation Energene to, you know, save George. And then kind of from that moment on, the very next kind of sequence where they try and steal the helicopter, The Rock just completely changes, and he goes from this kind of sentimental sentimental badass to this just over-the-top guy that's basically The Rock. He just starts throwing in quips. He's like, that's a big muscle, I'm going to choke you out. And it was just a really big shift. Like, after I kind of got used to it and they consistently started doing that, it was okay. Like, it was fine. It was like what it was supposed to be. There was just a very big shift between how The Rock started and how The Rock ended in this film. And, you know, yes, it's character progression, I guess, but it literally just happened over like one scene, so it was just very, very weird. Another like kind of negative about this film is that I know it's not about humans because, you know, you've got a giant 60-foot crocodile that George is fighting outside, but the brother and sister, I can't even remember their names. I think one was called Claire because they were that weak and forgettable. But the people behind Giant, they were just so ridiculous and like weak characters. And as I said, I know this movie's a lot of fun, but when you've got a really poor kind of bad guy to go against these three awesome good guys, it did really damage the film. They were just really forgettable and weak. And one of the really, really annoying things about this is that to get the antidote into George, spoiler here by the way, they feed Claire, I think her name was, to George, even though throughout this movie, not one time has any of these characters like ate somebody and eaten somebody. I know the wolf kind of chews on the guy, the military guy early on in the film, but I don't think he ate him. But George, anyway, George has not ate anybody in this movie, and then all of a sudden, when it's convenient to the story, George just thinks, yeah, I'm going to chew on this bitch here. And it was just so inconsistent and ridiculous. But yeah, as I said, that's the best way of summing up this film. It is ridiculous. Yes, it's flawed. Yes, it's really over the top and cheesy in points, but it's so damn enjoyable. As I said, it's a giant crocodile fighting a giant wolf, fighting a giant gorilla, fighting The Rock. It's just all craziness. It's all over the top. And yeah, it's really, really fun. I have seen a few people online saying, like, being really overly negative about Rampage. I don't know whether it's because they're, like, you know, taking it off the game or whatever, and, you know, they're not happy with the representation of that. But as a movie, as I had to judge it because I don't know anything about the game, I enjoyed it. I thought it was a whole lot of fun, sister, and I really suggest you guys go and check out Rampage. If you guys have seen Rampage, then let me know what you thought about it, as always, down in the comments below. And if you did enjoy this video and you want to keep up to date with all the latest movie news and reviews, then make sure you hit that subscribe button, and I will see you in the very next episode of The Jamie Hughes Show. Ta-ra!